Welcome to Freak Out with your psychic medium host, Liz. What's up, Freaked Out fam? I am so happy to be here with you guys today. We are finally in our new place. We have nothing literally set up. As you can see, I'm on a lawn chair. It's been fun, but I am so excited to be here for our next episode, which is considered a revamping since we already covered this case in the past, but it does give those very spooky, icky, crazy vibes. So I wanted to make a follow-up episode for you guys because I have a couple more details I wanted to share. Now, before we get into the Dardeen family, let me share some crazy things that I have recently found out. Luckily, family annihilation cases are probably one of the more rare type of cases that haunt us today. Less than 1% of cases are considered a family massacre, according to the FBI anyway. But they do happen, unfortunately, and we often remember them. And one of the wildest and craziest ones is the Dardeen family. Like a pregnant woman, a little boy, and a father, all gone in one night. Now, if you are not familiar with the case, we're going to go over the case details now. In 1987, in Illinois, a town of barely 460 people. You know, one of those places where there's one post office, one gas station, and of course, there's always a church. Keith was 29 years old at the time. Elaine was 30 years old, and they were living in a beige and white mobile home with their little son, Peter. Peter was only 3 years old at the time. Now, Elaine was 7.5 months pregnant, and they were pretty active in their Baptist church. Keith actually sang, and Elaine played the piano. Everyone said that they were well loved. They were kind, they were generous, and they were deeply devoted to their family. Now, Keith was somebody who was saving extra money all over the place. I'd say he was a peso pincher. Now, he would resell soda cans to Kroger, and he was stashing away that money. Now, he was sharing details with his mother about how he wanted to move and that he wasn't feeling safe at all where he was living. Now, in the last 2 years, there were actually 15 murders that had rocked that area. So, of course, he doesn't want to live there. Who would? And one of the more tragic murders was that of a 10-year-old little girl. Keith was determined to make sure that his family stayed safe. He kept the doors locked, and he made very strict rules in his house. No one comes in, and nobody answers the door. Tragically, November 17th, 1987 came. Keith did not show up for his overnight shift, and of course, that made people super sus. He wasn't someone to just skip out on work. And the following day, the police decided to check on the home and see what was going on. They found a very tragic sight ahead of them. They found Elaine and Peter and the newborn baby that was not supposed to be born for another 6 weeks, beaten to death by a baseball bat. Now, Keith's red Plymouth was gone. His body, though, was discovered later. The police were trying to say, did he do this? Now, with him, he was shot and mutilated, and this was done in a wheat field. Now, here's the interesting part about this case. The valuables were not touched. This wasn't a robbery, and the extensive details of what happened here seemed extremely personal. Now, Keith's father, Don, was the one who opened the door for the police. Imagine walking into your son's home, expecting to find him there, and instead you come across a bloody massacre of children and a wife. And of course, Keith's parents said that that moment never left them. And also, they were blaming Keith. So imagine all of that. And you're also hearing that people are saying, oh, it has to be him. It has to be him. Who else could it have been? Now, when it comes to Elaine's family, her family vouched for her over and over again, which does not surprise me, saying that she was kind, she enjoyed playing the piano, she did that with her whole heart, and she was a badass. She still showed up to cook dinner for her family, even cooking food for people in need. And they lost not just their daughter, but their grandson and another baby. And of course, little Peter, super shy, but when you caught him just right, he'd give you a little smile. Always holding his dad's hand at church, and to picture him in those final moments, I don't wish that upon anyone. And I mean, that's basically why the community still talks about this case. Now, a lot of people believe that it was a drifter, Rafael Ramirez. And then somebody ended up confessing to this crime, which was Tommy Lee Sells, which, I mean, he confessed, but he certainly did not do it. As we know previously from my last episode, I believe that it was a woman and a man who killed the family. Now, we're going to talk about these two individuals here as well. I'm going to call them Sandy and Paul. Not to say that Sandy and Paul are their names, because I'm not entirely sure, but for now we'll call them that to make things less confusing. Now, when I see the two of them, I see a brother and sister combination. Paul being mentally and physically disabled, and Sandy being someone who was always a bridesmaid, never a bride. And at some point in her life, became interested in obtaining some sort of relationship, of course, but she started to look at men whom she thought would be a good fit, somebody loyal, aka a married man. Now with Sandy, obviously it was back in the 80s, so she would spike up her hair and tease it and curl it. She dyed it blonde, or at least she thought it looked blonde. She looked a lot older than she was. I believe that she was in her early 30s, but she looked like she was in her 40s or 50s. She had dead eyes, fake smiles, and a lot of the women in the church did not want this woman around their husbands because she was always hanging on to people and always up in everyone's business, especially when she liked somebody. Now, this particular church is where I believe her and Keith met. Elaine was also met as well. And obviously she had Peter at that time. Peter was baby, and I see that she had seen Keith and thought, wow, that guy is the guy that is meant for me. I also believe that there was a reverend she was chasing at some point as well. And because of everything happening with this reverend, she didn't get her way. With Keith, that was the nail in the coffin for her, figuratively and literally. Now, Sandy was extremely abusive to her brother. I see that the parents are either dead already or just in a state where they cannot take care of him, and he ended up being her responsibility. I see that there might have been facilities for him to go to, but I keep seeing that his aggressive behavior would get him kicked out of places. So if the locals, any of you guys, see or understand or recognize anyone connected to this from the past, please let me know in the comment section, because I believe these are the two people responsible for this devastating massacre. So as time progressed, Sandy started to build up a relationship between her and Keith in her mind. He, being a kind churchgoer, was going to be polite. He didn't want to cause any problems. He wasn't necessarily interested in Sandy, but he did obtain a relationship in order to help her. Now, I feel like the singing aspect of things, she used that to her advantage. She wanted him to teach her something, I just see a lot of like little manipulation tactics in order to obtain his attention. And most of the time, it did not work. Then she would start something different, like trying to dress a little bit sexier to get his attention, try to touch him a lot more. And I do see that she did cross the line a few times with him as well. Now, I don't necessarily believe there was a full blown relationship, but I do feel like Keith somewhat gave in a little bit, but he also was somebody who could read somebody's energy, where he felt like she needed love and attention and wasn't getting it from anybody or anything, and he felt bad for her, so he would give in to her. Was it sexual? No, but in her mind, it was. In her mind, that was her man, and she was going to get him back. I believe that things started to escalate once the baby came and everyone had announced the pregnancy of the baby. That is what really put her over the edge. I don't know if they shared it early or not. I'm not sensing it was done early, but I do see that that pregnancy was like, that's it, I'm getting him away from her. Now, she crossed a lot of boundaries. I see that Elaine was also very cautious and wary of this woman. Like, what is she doing? But she wasn't the only woman. There were a few women in the congregation that also were very interested in being flirtatious with Keith. And it didn't go past that. Lonely women trying to help out a man. I do feel like there was an aspect of teaching, whether it was singing or music or something, or even the word of God. I feel like she was getting private lessons from him specifically. And I know he worked overnight. There could have been some sort of correlation where they spent time together in and around the time that he would go to work. Like, I see like she would run into him and stalk him. She knew his entire schedule. Now, there was some sort of confrontation. I see a knock at the door. I see duct tape. I see that he had seen who it was, so he let her in. Now, Sandy came in full-fledged with Paul behind her, and he had the baseball bat, and I believe there were other tools that he had in a bag as well. Now, Sandy flipped, like she went into some sort of rage, and because of that, Elaine was very scared. And because Sandy did this, scared the bejesus out of her, she went into labor. I see that in that moment, she was happy that Elaine was giving birth, because she was like, I'm doing that. I'm going to take care of this one, and delivered the baby for Elaine. Elaine kept asking to go to the hospital. She ignored her completely and just basically sat there telling Elaine that her husband was her man and that she was standing in the way of that, and her and this baby were never gonna do that. And that's when I hear Peter crying as well. It was so intense. Everyone were told to sit down, and I see that the baby was killed first, and then Peter, and then Elaine, and then obviously Keith was the last one. Now, she had like a monologue for each one of them, and Paul was the one who did the physical killing while she ranted on this monologue to Keith. And Keith was trying his hardest to try to keep his family alive by kind of indulging in her fantasy, like, no, you're right, dear. I should be with you. Let's get out of here and leave these people alone. He's not my son. She's pregnant with somebody else's kid. Like, he thought very quick thinking to kind of manipulate her, but because she was so angry and suspicious of him, she did not believe him. But there were moments where she tested him through that. Like, okay, so if you just want to be with me, how do you feel about me beating your child? And then he would show pain when that happened. And that's what really made her mad. So she beat the baby. Well, she got Paul to beat the baby. She got Paul to beat Peter. And then she got him to beat Elaine. And Elaine got it the absolute worst. Thank God the baby was barely alive already because of everything that happened, and even just the delivery itself. Like, she did not give two shits. She didn't help the child at all. She didn't give a shit. She was like, yeah, well, he's dead already. You know what I mean? Like, she didn't care. So that was beyond disturbing. But Elaine felt every last bit of it. I also see that Sandy was really upset with Paul because he wasn't following instructions. Do it right. Do it right. Now, Paul, although mentally disabled and physically disabled, was not enjoying this task. He was hesitant to do so, but he was doing it because he was told to do so. And I see him being very upset, crying, fighting it every step of the way, and her getting really mad and calling him useless and giving him really disturbing names. Like, she was horrible to him. Now, when it comes to Sandy and taking Keith out, the two of them, and they all switched up the cars, which is why they took his car, and then she went with him in the car. And then Paul was the one who took their car elsewhere. She said, meet me here. So he did. And that is when she killed Keith. Keith wanted to go at this point. You took everything else from me, you might as well take my life too. He didn't want to live anymore. He told her that, and he told her to go to hell, and that she was evil and she was going to hell. Like, he gave it to her, and she still holds on to that to this day. She is bloody crazy. Now, the families have constantly been asking for updates on this case. Like, what happened? Who did this? Please tell me something. And they haven't gotten the answers because they just don't know. Keith is with his family. That's all he wanted in this whole thing. And he just tells me to tell people to be safe. He also kept praising God through this. So he said that also helped him out a lot. He knew that he was meant for good. He knew his wife was good. He knew his children were good. And although he did have moments where he gave in to Sandy, but in reality, he didn't want her. And that made her mad. And she wanted revenge. And I don't believe he was the only person she has killed. Technically, Paul killed the rest of the family, but I do see somebody else dying of her hands. More so poison side of things. And I definitely don't believe her brother is around anymore either. At some point, I think he got Alzheimer's. And then from there, his brain stopped working, which, I mean, in this case, I don't think that's a bad thing. She made him kill people and not mess with him. He did hurt her a few times, and she hurt him. She would use food as something to control him with. It was pretty bad. But that is the update of what I have on the Dardeen Family Massacre. They are all together. Just know that. They are happy on the other side. They're not in any bad place. They didn't do anything harmful. Peter's still a kid. They're still dressed up in their 80s clothes. They haven't really changed much. They just wanted peace. And they are all still together. But anyways, guys, that is it for today's episode. Next week, I actually have 2 episodes dropping. One on the exclusive side called What We Don't Know. We have spent so much time talking about Trump and Trump bullshit that I wanted to focus more on subjects and topics that we haven't talked about like ever. So I want to focus on that. And this will be a good one. But anyways, guys, make sure to keep your doors locked. Until next time, stay freaked out.